Yeah, Mr. President, may I get permission to speak from a seat that is not my own? Great. There has been a spotlight on crime and violence in the country and the overall perception of our leadership. I'm not going to begin by quoting the numbers because sometimes there's going to be discrepancy. One party saying that X amount of people died, the other party arguing that Y amount of people died, and this is distracting us from the real story that crime and violence is indeed a problem here in Jamaica, and it must be corrected for the betterment of everyone and for the betterment of the Jamaica land we love. Mr. President, Senator Sinclair will agree that in the West we have been severely affected by crime and high incidence of violence. But we're trying to cope. I mean, across my constituency, we have had several peace through sports initiatives, and we also have had several Paint for Peace initiatives. We hosted a Paint for Peace initiative in Sam Sharp Square, Montego Bay, where we invited Mr. Mark Hill, who is a world-renowned painter, to come and do his rendition. He donated a painting entitled The Ugly Face of War to the city. It is now being displayed in the Montego Bay Art Gallery, and everyone can feel free to go there and have a look at Mr. Hill's painting. I mean, several high school students turned out for the event, and a lot of prominent painters from Montego Bay. The day was very good, and as we culminated, there was this one artist that we were observing throughout the day who was painting a light blue background that we assumed was the blue skies illustrating the beautiful weather in Jamaica. He went on to paint some upside down triangles that we might have interpreted as mountains. He painted some sand looking paint strokes at the end of the mountains, and we might have assumed that that was painting sand. He was painting a beautiful scenery. Mr. President, he painted and painted and painted, and when he was finished, the painting looked like this: an image of a chimpanzee holding a pistola, and on his t-shirt he wrote, "Chimpanzees run Jamaica." Mr. President, the state of the nation is a state of emergency that we must address with urgency. When I take a look at this painting, it is symbolizing to me that this is the public perception of the leadership that we have in this country. And as a leader, I am ashamed. As a leader, I felt so bad that the people of Jamaica believe that we are primitive. The name of the painting is primitive. And as I would suppose that moving into 2020, when I watched the movie Back to the Future, and it showed 2019, 2020, it illustrated a futuristic world where people are living in peace and harmony. Mr. President, Jamaica is an important country to this world. Peace and harmony is an important aspect of a civilized nation, and I expect that for now we will move from this primitive type of leadership to a more significant, a more, I can pass it around. We're a nation of such remarkable people, and I must reiterate that we excel at whatever we do. So much so now that we are excelling at crime and violence. I mean, no chefs anymore. Everyone wants to be a baker. Everyone wants to bake it, because they believe that if they bake it, that's the best way to make it. Last week I had the privilege of watching some young people speak in this honorable house, and they emitted fear for their future lives. They emitted a sense of uncertainty about the type of future that a special country like Jamaica has to offer to them. Mr. President, the children aren't the only ones. Our diaspora are also in fear. I received several emails from people who want to come home, people who want to contribute to our economic development, but are fearful because of the high level of crime and violence. Mr. President, we have to take this seriously because, as I said before, the state of the nation is a state of emergency which we must address with urgency. And the state of emergency has been very intimidating to business activity, both for those who live here and those who want to return here. And it has been very intimidating to people when they try to peddle their wares in Montego Bay. And I hope that in this Christmas, the state of emergency will not suppress economic activity, because economic activity is important for income earning, and economic activity is important for the livelihoods and the standard of living of the people in Jamaica. Mr. President, as a nation, we face severe challenges. I mean, crime and violence is but one. The state of our healthcare system is appalling. Mr. President, I went to the Cornwall Regional Hospital, or the makeshift that they have created in lieu of what originally existed with my uncle, and the situation was appalling. People were sleeping on chairs, people were sleeping on the floor, and people were hanging drips from sticks. Mr. President, as a civilized nation, we cannot afford to be moving into 2020 with such backward approach to healthcare and medicine. The outbreak of dengue has indicated to us that there must be a more concerted effort directed towards our healthcare across the country. Last year, there were 13 deaths reported. This year, there were 30. And next year, what direction will it take? Will it continue in that upward trajectory? Or will we find solutions that are plausible? When I saw the news, I thought we were going to buy equipment to get rid of mosquitoes. We were going to buy equipment to look at how we treat dirty waters around the island. When I saw the news, the government purchased new vehicles, new cars, new vans to drive around. Mr. President, I don't think that as leaders we are taking the leadership and national development as serious as we should have. I don't think as leaders that we take healthcare, education, the distribution of water resources, and electricity as serious as we should have. In this modern world, hospital data should be on a centralized system, and you should be able to access the data from anywhere you are in the country. My uncle broke his 2 legs, and we had to drive him from Montego Bay to Falmouth to do an x-ray. We had to travel with all the x-rays that he'd done previously, and when we went there, the nurse was scrambling through to see which one was the updated one. I think that now more than ever, moving into 2020, we have to take a futuristic approach towards national development. If we develop a central system to share data, healthcare data, among hospitals, among health centers, among doctors, then in this case, our overall healthcare system will be better off. I mean, Jamaica has come a far way, but there's still a far way to go. And now more than ever, we have to leapfrog the rhetoric. We must make bold moves, and we must be steadfast and secure in the objectives that we want to achieve. Mr. President, our children are depending on us. Our parents and foreparents are depending on us. And most importantly, we are depending on ourselves. Mr. President, building roads alone cannot improve this country. If crime, healthcare, education, and the provision of basic necessities are failing, it means our civil service is failing, it means that Jamaica is failing, and it means that we as leaders are failing as well. The dengue outbreak, Mr. President, brings us to a better understanding of how modern countries function. I must commend Senator Samuda for his motion on recycling, and this should continue. It's important that we look at recycling in a way that it does not only affect one particular group, it affects everyone, not in a negative way, but in a positive way. And what do I mean? A modern country deals with waste management. I saw an article where a country like Switzerland, for example, was importing garbage because it has none. It has recycled everything. And this is where Jamaica should go. When you take a look at the markets, we should set up recycling facilities there. We should set up recycling facilities in our communities. And we should promote that we recycle all types of material. Very important. And waste to energy is also important because renewable energy now is also an important part of a modern economy. If we are looking at the cost of energy, it has been having a negative impact on our goods production sector, and we need research to find simple, reliable energy sources, and they do exist. If you look at what is going on, if you follow the technology sites, if you follow renewable energy sites, there are modern conventions now that Jamaica can take advantage of, and all we need is an important thrust towards recycling, waste to energy, and renewable energy sources. Mr. President, water distribution has been having a negative impact on agricultural output over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years. If too much rain falls, it's a problem. If too little rain falls, it's also a problem. I don't see a country like Jamaica that is classified as a land of wood and water to be facing such severe water problems, especially as it relates to output. We have to now secure our water catchment facilities across all parishes, and we have to look at how we can redistribute water effectively across all parishes. Mr. President, what I've done thus far as the opposition spokesperson on planning and development is to get some GIS mapping of all the rivers, big and small, as well as the water sources across the country. And by doing so, we can therefore see where water is coming from, and we can look at the water table to see how best we can redistribute or divert these water channels so that it may service not just our farming, because that is very important, but also our inner cities, which are water strapped and are devastated. I must share a story with you. My brother's wife is from Singapore, and one day he called because he was at work that I should bring some water for his wife. I bought a bottle of water, and when I went there, she was devastated. She was trying to turn on the tap, and she was frantic. She said, "Oh, I don't know how to turn the tap on. I'm so sorry. I just got here." And she thought it was a different mechanism from where she lived. And when I realized the tap was on, but there was no water coming from the pipe. And that was the first time the young lady was experiencing a situation where there was no water coming from the tap. And at that moment, I realized that there's a big disparity between developed nations, arguably as Singapore, and a developing nation, arguably as Jamaica. Mr. President, if we are supposed to move from the process of a developing nation to the process of a developed nation, then at least water resources must be adequately distributed across the entire country.
Must be the norm.
Mr. President, I'm an economist, and I'm here to speak predominantly about the economy. But the economy is a multifaceted element. The economy is a multifaceted structure, and therefore it requires multifaceted analysis. The exchange rate has been up and down like a yo-yo. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. It moved from 130 to 142, from 142 to 134, from 134 to 120, from 120 to 130. Mr. President, this is in economic terms what we refer to as volatility. And what volatility does is that volatility breeds risk. Volatility breeds risk. And risk is dangerous for business. Mr. President, we want to see a more stable approach towards our exchange rate and our currency? Can you imagine a manufacturer who is trying to purchase goods 3 months in advance for his productive process? What exchange rate does he use? Does he use the 140? Would he use the 120? Does he use the 130? I mean, last year the UWI Mona marked their exchange rate at 130. And when the exchange rate ended up at 136, we end up losing. And there are several other businesses who try to do the same thing. You try to predict the exchange rate in order to make future purchases. I mean, it's very bad for business. It is very, 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 very bad for business. Last week, as well as I outlined earlier, I received a message from Sate that as a result of the currency depreciations, they are going to increase the price of patties and cocoa bread. Now, what does that mean for the poor and underprivileged in Jamaica? What does that mean? That means that the cost of basic consumption goods increase whenever the exchange rate increase. I mean, this week the exchange rate appreciated from 142 to 134. Did I get a message from Sate that they're going to drop their prices? No, I received no message. Why? Because in economics, prices are what we call sticky on the downside. Prices rarely fall. Prices rarely fall. And why blame our producers? Why blame our suppliers? Whenever the exchange rate depreciates, they have to increase their prices to mitigate any loss they may incur as a result of exchange rate depreciation. When the exchange rate appreciates again, it means therefore that they, though acknowledging that the exchange rate has appreciated, cannot drop their prices because they are anticipating that the exchange rate is going to go up again next week, and if not next week, the week after or the week after. So the menu costs, the shoe leather costs, and all other economic costs associated with a depreciating currency is incurred by the suppliers, and they pass it on to us as consumers. Mr. President, any country with a negative trade balance and a depreciating exchange rate must look at measures to increase export, must look at measures to increase value added of the goods that it produces, and it must take a more concerted effort towards developing the nation to where it should be. Currently, Jamaica imports are 3 times the value of its exports. Of the 242 billion of exports in 2018, bauxite and alumina accounted for 147 billion, which is more than half. Bauxite and alumina accounted for over half, which means that when you look at what we export, the secondary produced goods, goods that goes up the value chain, alumina, etc., are the goods that are generating for us the bulk of our foreign currency intake. We have to now look at productive processes that can expand these and that can generate more income for the country. From the side of our imports, of the 789 billion that we imported in 2018, more than 216 billion is on fuel and oil imports, and 185 billion was the previous year. So the currency depreciation had an impact on our imports as well. Mr. President, this country is dear to my heart. Why? Because there is no place like home. There are many places I could be, but I choose to be here. Why? Because I am a Jamaican. I have a solemn duty to contribute whatever expertise I have to the overall development of this country. The exchange rate does not only affect the purchasing of day-to-day goods and services or the value of our imports relative to our exports. Exchange rate also has a negative impact when it depreciates on the value of our foreign currency debt servicing. I've done some calculations, and for every 1% depreciation in the exchange rate, our foreign currency debt servicing increases by 0.5%. If we are talking in terms of billions, then we are looking at $500 million each time, $500 million each time. Now, speaking in terms of a country that is cash-strapped, a country that now has a primary surplus of 7.5%, 7%, a country that most times has to borrow to contribute to its debt service and repayment, we have to take the exchange rate and its impact on the national debt seriously. This idea about let's not focus on the exchange rate, this idea about what is happening, this idea about the exchange rate is not important, must be put aside. Mr. President, there has been many talks, and our party leader made some hint and tossed out a bait about reducing GCT by 2%. And I heard Senator Sinclair as well as Ardley Shaw talking about, yes, they are going to take this into consideration without breaking down the numbers. Mr. President, let me, instead of break down, let me break up the numbers. If we are supposed to reduce GCT by 2%, moving it from 16.5 to 14.5%, it will cost the country around 25 to 26 billion, assuming that every year we intake 200 billion from GCT. Now this 2% is going to cost the country $26 billion. That is the average cost. Now, what is the cost? And no one is setting up everyone. I mean, economics is a simple thing, it's just numbers, dollars and cents. It's going to cost us 26 billion. Now, what is the benefit to the average Jamaican consumer? What is the benefit to the average consumer? I mean, if you buy something for $100, you'll pay $16.15 GCT. You're going to save $2. If you buy something for $1,000, you might save $20. If you buy something for $10,000, you're going to save $200. And when you buy something for $100,000, you will save $2,000. Now, Mr. President, is this savings as significant enough to each Jamaican for us to sacrifice 26 billion to achieve? Huh? Is it? We have to think more carefully about what our objectives are. The fiddling, we always toss them bait, man. And fishes will always bite baits. I have never been a advocate for the fiddling of numbers. I have never been an advocate for the fiddling of numbers. I believe that whatever cost we incur as a nation, it must be to the full benefit of the country. And this brings us, Mr. President, to the fourth industrial revolution. Our education system must evolve, which is why I'm happy that we were discussing the Hard Trust today, because our education system must evolve not to meet our 2030 goals, because that's a fleeting illusion, but to meet our 2040 goals, our 2050 goals, our 2060 goals, our 2100 goals, and 2200 goals. As a developing nation, we must start to plan not just for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, but for centuries, because that is the way a nation moves forward. GIS mapping has played an important role in how cities and countries develop. In this case, so far we have mapped poverty across the island, and what we've realized that parishes and counties without adequate resources, parishes and counties without the right infrastructure, without the right activities for people to gain meaningful employment, face the greatest incidence of poverty. Mr. President, data and blockchain technology has been assisting the world to move forward into the fourth industrial revolution. It is our intention to move from smart communities to smart divisions, and from smart divisions to smart constituencies, and from smart constituencies to smart cities, and ultimately to a smart country. The use of blockchain technology can solve many of our problems, including government inefficiencies. I hear them speak about needs, but blockchain technology can create a safer and more secure identity system that can replace whatever handicaps that we incurred when we discuss the needs and other forms of identity system for the nation. Smart camera systems are also important. Jamaica has to get hip with the script and with the data revolution that is now taking place across the world. The world is moving into a data revolution, and data science is solving problems and expanding industries, and it is these that we have to use as a country if we hope to thrust forward. Mr. President, we have to move from the whole idea of economic growth and job creation and replace it with economic development and wealth creation. GDP growth has averaged 0.7% over the last 50 years. If we focus on creating jobs as we have been doing, we have realized that much of the increase in GDP is as a result of the quantity of jobs rather than the quality of jobs. Mr. President, in a country like Jamaica, where we want to develop beyond where we are now, it is important for us to focus more on quality rather than quantity. I mean, the Prime Minister spoke about creating STEM schools, and we can't argue or fight it. But a very good idea that now, when we create these schools, are they going to be providing and preparing employment for the UK, Canada, and the USA, such that we have been doing now in our current education system? Mr. President, our most successful teachers, our most successful doctors, our most successful nurses have left the island for better living in more developed countries because the compensation packages are greater. In other words, what is the end game? What is the end game? Look how many nurses, how many doctors, how many teachers we have trained, and where are they now? Many have migrated in search of a better life. Many have migrated and have acquired their dreams, and those who have remained here are miserable. Those who have remained here are in anguish and pain and discomfort because they can't earn enough to cover their bills and they can't save. All this excellence that we speak of, which economy will this excellence benefit? Which economy will this excellence service? Which economy will have the capacity to absorb these STEM labors that Jamaica wants to create? Surely these questions are necessary, and we do not have the capacity to absorb them here domestically. Then why? What are we doing? Fundamentally, as a result, it is achievable, and Jamaica from now on, everything we do must be calculated. Everything we do must be precise, and whatever people we try and attempt to train must be filtered into different aspects of productive processes that will benefit not the United States, not the USA, not the UK, but the Jamaica that we love. Politicians are used to doing things one way, and they have not realized that the world has evolved and will keep evolving. As a result, we must evolve, and we have to move away from the idea of creating jobs, as I said before, and the idea of achieving economic growth, to the idea of creating wealth for the nation and the idea of developing an economy. Mr. President, the first economics book I ever read and the first economics book that has ever been published is titled The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. He could have easily titled the book The Growth of Nations or The Employment of Labor. But why? He realized that by just focusing on employment only, or just focusing on economic growth only, such as what Jamaica has been doing over the last 50 years, your country's growth will be stagnated. A prosperous country like Jamaica must move away from its overall ideologies of just improving GDP growth, which cannot be achieved if we do not make a thrust towards creating wealth. Mr. President, GDP does not say anything about the environment. GDP does not say anything about the quality of life or our standard of living. GDP does not say anything about Jamaican citizens and how we are being compensated. As a matter of fact, a lady said to me that GDP sounds like an ex-political party in her ignorance. Now, where are we? The government domestic party. And she went on to explain to me, Dr. Haughton, let me tell you something. GDP cannot. What does this mean? Irrespective of our political parties, we have to use our common sense and step into the future. I read a story by Sir Francis Bacon, this person who they named that part of the pork that you like, and he spoke of when he voyaged from England back then, and he stumbled upon the great Atlantis. He spoke of how civilized these people were. He spoke of how eloquent they were. He spoke of how peaceful they were. Mr. President, we have been here before, and we can go here again. Policies are necessary to promote and facilitate the improvement of Jamaica, and policies are necessary to promote the creation of wealth for the nation. Mr. President, we need, alongside or instead of the Tourism Enhancement Fund, we need a technology and an innovation enhancement fund. In lieu of a lot of things we do, it is important that we realize that now more than ever, Jamaica is in a critical position and the world itself is moving in an upward trajectory. And in order for us to do so, we too must find ways in order to create value and increase the value of the output that we produce per day. The special economic zone policy should be geared towards creating value added along these lines. Instead of creating jobs through BPO, we should collaborate with the Chinese or whomever to unearth any rare materials that exist and embark on vertical diversification to create more value added for the country. Montego Bay has been neglected by the formal economic system. All they gave us was hotels and BPO, which is very good, but not enough. I want us to picture a better Jamaica. I want us to picture a brighter light. And if we can't do it with our eyes open, I would ask us now to take a deep breath and to close our eyes. I want us to close our eyes and take a deep breath, because I want us to picture Jamaica where workers are well compensated because the level of productivity is high. Where there's efficient transportation system, moving goods and people from ports to docks, to country to town, from rural areas to urban areas, where you can visit the hospital and receive first-class health care, where the education system is also first class, which is it has been, because we have first-class Jamaican students, but we need more. Imagine a Jamaica where the goods and services offered by the world or offered to the world by us is of high value. Imagine a Jamaica where there is peace. Imagine a Jamaica where we can leave our doors open. Many times we've imagined that, but we have not seen it as a reality. We need to live in a peaceful reality, Mr. President. We need to live in a peaceful reality. Imagine if we were supposed to sign a deal with Tesla, for example. They are just making shingles that provide solar energy. If we were to put in law that every household in the hot places must use these shingles to generate energy. These are the type of policies that we want to see moving into the 2020, moving into the new world. Mr. President, data. And we cannot overemphasize the importance of data to this new world. We have to use data to drive our progress in the new world forward. We must collect data from the micro level and tabulate them to the macro level for analysis, and use data to influence what we become, who we are, and where we go. I remember a young boy, Mr. President, who had the vision to transform a city, who had the vision to transform a country, and the only thing standing in his way were corrupt, ill-informed politicians. Politicians who lack understanding of a proper economic management, but I have news for them now. Young people are becoming smarter. Young people are becoming more clever. Young people are cleverer every day, and soon and very soon, corrupt politicians will become a thing of the past for Jamaica. Mr. President, corrupt politicians will become a thing of the past for Jamaica. Corrupt Watch your speed, read. Corrupt politician will become a thing of the past. Mr. President, the pride and national sovereignty that we're expecting from our leaders is little. They do not demonstrate the level of selflessness that is needed to put country and nation building above self. The intelligence to know that whatever we focus on will become who we are. And if we focus on nonsense, Mr. President, GIGO will become nonsense. Mr. President, based on my illustration in my icebreaker, you realize that the country has a negative view of the political process. And we have to rebuild. We have to rebuild the integrity of the politics, and we have to rebuild the integrity of politicians in order for us to lead effectively. Mr. President, as usual, it is important for us to be the voice of the voiceless. It is important for us to give hope to the hopeless. It is important for us to give sense to the senseless and to create a Jamaica that we all want to live in. Mr. President, we have to give privilege to the underprivileged. And just as how there is an American dream and people leave from all over the world to go to America to realize their dreams, we should also know that we should create a Jamaican dream, because Jamaicans have aspirations. Jamaicans want a better future, and Jamaicans also want a country that they can work, live, play, and raise families. Mr. President, the time is now. We will begin today, and we will begin now, for there is no time like the present. We have to start with our communities and move from our communities to our cities, and from our cities to our parishes, and then all across the nation. We will rebuild because we must, and we will because Jamaica may, under God, increase in beauty, fellowship and prosperity, and continue to play its part in the advancement of the entire human race. I thank you.